Welcome to CBC News Toronto. I am Dwight Drummond, and Colette is standing by on what, Colette, is the coldest day of the winter so far.
Yeah, it was certainly a cold start this morning, Dwight, when those winds were a little bit stronger. So at least we can say the winds have eased up a little bit, and so that's helped with the wind chills. We'll take a look at those current readings. I want to just show you the stats, and we'll reacquaint ourselves that an average high at this time of year is -2, average low -10, and for today, the high that we got to this afternoon, I know it's hard to call it a high, -7.6, and this morning we did make that -14, or at least we'll round that to that at -13.7. So chilly start. It's that it felt like -25 with the wind chill this morning. Current temperatures out there, some minus single digits, -9 for Toronto and Mississauga, but double digits too. Markham at -11, Oshawa -10. We take the winds. You can see in a few cases actually coming in reported as calm in St. Catharines and into Kitchener as well, and they're lighter elsewhere, mostly less than 10 kilometers an hour. So our wind chill not as significant as what we were seeing. That was a little bit hard to take. Satellite and radar imagery is showing some of the cloud cover out there. There's a more significant system that's well to the southwest of us coming out of the Plain States. It's going to be skirting through over the next 24 hours. When I say skirting through to the south of us, this ridge of high pressure is going to protect us. We'll pick up some of the cloud cover from it. Further west, some of flurries possible between this and just because of the lakes, but mostly we're going to see some sunshine into tomorrow, or at least a mix of sun and cloud. Overnight tonight, -10, feeling more like about -14, and tomorrow afternoon, -5, still feeling like -8 to -10. There is a warm-up coming, Dwight. I'll tell you about that coming up.
Thank you, Colette.
No problem.
We have some breaking news for you out of Ottawa right now, where a bus crash has sent more than a dozen people to hospital. Here's what we know so far. It happened just before 4 this afternoon, involving an OC Transpo bus at Westboro Station. Police are calling it a serious single-vehicle crash. An Ottawa City Councillor tells CBC News that at least 12 people were taken to hospital in serious condition. At least one person was being treated at the scene. The Ottawa Hospital said it is treating 2 people in critical condition. We have reporters on the ground there. We will bring you the latest from the scene as soon as we can. Again, we're following news of a bus crash in Ottawa. At least 12 people have been injured, some critically. We'll, of course, stay on the story over the next hour.
You cannot touch my camera without asking me. I have my family in my car, and we have conversations that they actually had to go through footages to find their own footage to delete.
Footage accessed, then deleted. A Toronto man is upset his dash cam was messed with at the dealership. His dash cams were on when he took his car in, but they were turned off without his knowledge. Chris Glover has been digging into this story. He joins us now. Chris, he's mad the cameras were shut off, but he's even angrier that footage was actually deleted from the cam.
Hyder Faraz has taken his vehicle to several other mechanics before, and never have his devices been touched. But this time, not only were they touched, but videos were deleted, and now he is wondering what happened when the cameras weren't rolling. This is Hyder Faraz, and this is his dashboard camera shooting inside the vehicle. He also has one pointing out. He uses them to spot crimes, for insurance purposes, and for the general security of his vehicle. In November, he took his BMW to the dealership. First, the employee notices the camera shooting out and turns it off. Then he gets inside and turns that one off too.
Well, that kind of raises a flag. Why did he do that? Maybe he feared something, or maybe like now I don't know what happened to my car, and for that time being, isn't under their control now. They could do anything. They could speed up with it. They could have damages done to it. I don't know. It's the same thing as, for example, if I have a house and I hire contractors to come work in my house, and I have cameras pointing in my house, they come and disconnect my cameras. They're like, oh, we don't want to be in your camera. But you can't do that because I'm recording for my safety, for my property safety. It's the same thing as my car. You're not allowed to disconnect it without permission. A couple weeks later, Faraz took his vehicle back to the same dealership, and it happened again.
This is the date. Today is December 9, 2018. Look at the date.
He doesn't have video this time because he says not only did the mechanic stop the recording, Faraz says he also deleted files and did a factory reset.
This has raised a concern from privacy because I have my family in my car and we have conversations that they actually had to go through footages to find their own footage to delete. And this is a 100% no-no. Like, you cannot access people's private information.
Perez didn't notice it was off, and as a result, his dashboard camera missed this collision, instead only capturing the wreck after on his phone.
So there was a head-on collision in front of me, right in front of me, like two meters away from me. But when I wanted, the footage wasn't there.
So I oversee all the service and all the parts departments we have.
Perez recorded his phone call with the dealership's director of fixed operations.
They're not comfortable being watched, okay, without their knowledge, okay. So yeah, they do disconnect them. I'm not going to, argue that point, okay. They do disconnect them, and it's probably a common practice in our trade.
This is not fair what they're doing to people. Someone has to step up and tell them what they're doing is wrong. And I think this is going to be me, because I think this dealership is getting used to it and they're doing it to other people, and people are just quiet about it and they're not knowing their right.
So I called the dealership in question to ask them why they did this and what is their policies around this. They didn't respond to me, but I did call other dealerships and other mechanics in the city, and they were saying that generally there doesn't seem to be any specific policies around this, Dwight, but the mechanics and the managers that I spoke to said that they certainly would not be touching somebody else's dash cameras.
All right, you also spoke, Chris, with a privacy lawyer for your story. Who does she think is in the wrong here then?
Potentially neither. She was saying that essentially it's not a problem for the character in the story to have had his camera rolling in a public place like a workplace such as this. It could have been problematic had it been in a more sensitive area, such as a bathroom or a locker room, something like that. She also said that the mechanic in this case also wouldn't necessarily have been in the wrong having turned off the dash cams. The problem could become for the mechanic in this case if he accessed the video, watched the video, and deleted and destroyed the video unintentionally or intentionally. That is the part that could be problematic in this story. Dwight?
Makes sense. Thank you, Chris. And remember, if you have a story you would like our investigative team to look into, just send us an email, torontotips@cbc.ca.
What's the future of Ontario Place? I'm Lorenda Redicop. The new board chair has been quoted as saying it's in complete disrepair. Some worry that means everything could be torn down. I'll have more coming up.
I'm disgusted when General Motors lies to Canadians as a way of maintaining their sales base. Sell here! Build here! Sell here! Build here! Sell here! Build here! Do you understand, General Motors? You haven't seen anything yet.
Full of rage and indignation, Unifor President Jerry Dias again took to the microphone today, firing up a crowd and railing against General Motors. The union staged a rally in Windsor today over GM's decision to close the Oshawa assembly plant at the end of this year. Jason Vio joins us live after spending the day in the middle of that rally. And Jason, what were you hearing from the workers in that crowd?
Well, Dwight, workers are angry, as we just heard there. They feel like they've been lied to, cheated. They're disappointed in GM's decision not only to plan to close the Oshawa plant later this year, but also their decision to turn down Unifor's proposals that they made last week to try to keep that open. Now, hundreds of people came down here to Windsor's waterfront for that rally, the largest yet, they say. Now, they chose this location specifically today as well because GM executives were meeting with investors at their headquarters behind me in Detroit. Auto workers in Windsor also showed up, worried that what happened in Oshawa could one day happen here with the Chrysler plant here. People were chanting, "Sell here, buy here," while waving their Unifor flags, hoping those execs will pay some attention. Some even wore shirts that said, "Canada didn't bail out GM to move our jobs to Mexico." Workers are furious, but they aren't willing to give up.
I've been a 30-year GM employee. I've been proud to be a GM employee. I am proud no longer. My family's affected, our community's affected, and it's just, I mean, people are, you know, crying in the plant. They're frustrated. We've been loyal GM customers, loyal GM employees, and there's just no loyalty back. It's shame on General Motors.
Now, General Motors has said that they couldn't keep that plant in Oshawa open for economic reasons, and it would hurt their global competitive advantage. And they also say it's part of their strategy as they move more towards electric vehicles and automation. Dwight.
So, Jason, what's next as Unifor continues the battle to try to keep the Oshawa plant open?
Well, the main message from Unifor today, at least, was they were requesting or demanding even a meeting with Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, Ontario Premier Doug Ford, as well as GM CEO Mary Barra. That's where they want to take this next. And earlier this week, as we know, Jerry Dias left the meetings with high-level execs at the GM building behind me. He says he left disgusted after they turned down those proposals. They say the window is closing for GM to reverse its decision, but they say they aren't going to give up on this fight. In fact, it is just starting. Now, although workers say morale is down on the shop floor, they say rallies like this one help a lot.
The only way to beat these corporate greedy people is to show solidarity and stick together. We have to stick together in this because it's not going to be over with just General Motors Oshawa. This goes beyond Oshawa.
What they say with retraining is a load of crock. They did that 10 years ago when we bailed them out. They had that second career thing. Sounded really good, but when you signed up, if you had a degree in, let's say, English, and you worked there for 20, 25 years, guess what? You're not eligible because you had that post-secondary.
I mean, if they're going to pay for me to go to school, so be it. I'm going to use their money and put it towards my future, and you can bet your ass I'm not buying a GM vehicle ever again.
Now, speaking of GM vehicles, next week marks the media kickoff for the North American International Auto Show in downtown Detroit here behind me. That's where thousands of automotive journalists from around the world will be here. And Unifor says you better bet that they will be making some noise to make sure that people at the auto show know what GM did, they say, and also that Canadians feel betrayed. Dwight.
Jason Buell live from Windsor for us tonight. Thank you, Jason. And as protesters were gathering for that General Motors rally, some news from GM headquarters. The automaker announced it is doing better than expected and bumped up its forecast for profits. GM says it will make more money in 2018 than it originally thought. And take a look at 2019. The company expects to make between $9.2 and $9.9 billion in profit. That's more than what analysts were expecting. General Motors stocks went up nearly 8% after announcing the news this morning. An American man who smuggled 67 guns into Ontario from Michigan has received an 8-year prison sentence. Randy Jackson admitted Monday to trafficking the firearms onto the black market. Jackson first caught the attention of Toronto police last July. They traced a loaded Glock 19 9mm handgun to him during an investigation. He bought that gun and dozens of others from firearms dealers in Detroit, Port Huron, and Ann Arbor. Nearly half of them were Glock handguns. He then brought the firearms over the border to sell in Ontario on the black market. And to cross the border, he used a Nexus pass. He would then travel to London, where his spouse and child live. The Canada Border Service Agency flagged Jackson for a secondary inspection when he tried to cross the border last October. During a search, officials found 3 firearms hidden in Jackson's pants. On Monday, Jackson pleaded guilty to 4 counts of trafficking weapons. A multiple-car fire at Woodbine Racetrack overnight is being investigated as a possible arson. The fire started in one car right around midnight, then quickly spread to 6 other vehicles. No one was injured. Fire investigators have been called in. Community groups are worried that Ontario Place could be turned over to big business. Right now, it's a public space, and the group wants it to stay that way. But the province recently appointed a chair for Ontario Place who may have a much different vision. Lorenda Redekop joins us live now. And Lorenda, the battle over this space started almost 50 years ago?
That's right. That's how old Ontario Place is. Now, it is starting to show its age in the daylight hours. You can see some rust on that bridge behind me as well. The paint is peeling a bit. There has been revitalization, though, going on for a few years now. But community groups working on the future of the waterfront, they were really alarmed when they saw comments quoted the new board chair for Ontario Place. Jim Janu was quoted as saying it is in complete disrepair. And then Ontario's finance minister, he also confirmed that anything is possible for the future of this site. Now, one of the groups I mentioned, Waterfront for All, Ken Greenberg is with that group, made up of various community organizations. So, Ken, when you saw those comments, what did you think?
We were pretty alarmed because the comment about anything is possible was really in response to, could it be a casino? And that's the last thing we would want to see here. The other comments about this is a disgrace, it has to be completely demolished, and even more disturbing, it's not a waterfront place. Well, obviously it is. So Waterfront for All is bringing together people from across the entire 50 kilometers of the Toronto waterfront, the whole city region tomorrow, in a rally for Ontario Place at Metro Hall from 1 to 4 tomorrow to talk about the future and what this great place can be with all the ideas that have been generated by the community.
All right, thanks so much. And Dwight, I did receive a statement from the province today. The Ministry of Tourism, Culture and Sport says that the government has been hard at work as we move forward with our plan to turn Ontario Place into a spectacular world-class tourism destination, with details to be released in the coming weeks. And I spoke as well with other levels of government about this.
Where I get nervous is that I've seen what that means in Doug Ford's lexicon before. That means big Ferris wheels and casinos and tour buses and parking lots and paving stuff over.
Ontario Place is not and cannot be for sale. In fact, part of the land within Ontario Place is owned by the city, and we're not selling it.
Now, Ken Greenberg mentioned that event happening tomorrow. They want to hear from people from the public to hear what people want for this site. Dwight?
Thank you for that, Lorenda. More than a dozen people are injured after a double-decker bus crashed into an Ottawa bus shelter this afternoon. It happened during rush hour, right around 4 o'clock. Let's go live to Ithel Musa at the scene. Now, Ithel, what do we know about what happened at this point?
Well, Dwight, just a few minutes ago, Police Chief Charles Bordelot informed us that there are fatalities. Now, he wouldn't say the exact number. He said that police will be giving another briefing at around 7 p.m., but he did say fatalities. Now, we know when we arrived on scene over an hour ago that 17 people were transported to hospital, and one person was so seriously injured that paramedics kept that person here while they worked on them. So that's how serious it was. As you mentioned, it was a double-decker bus that collided with a shelter during the very, very busy bus rush hour. This station is quite busy. It's located on the west end of the city, and it's bringing back some bad memories from people because just 6 years ago, 6 people died when a double-decker bus in Ottawa collided with a Via Rail train. So we don't know the exact number of fatalities just yet, but we do know that there were people that were also very, very seriously injured. We don't also know the circumstances that led the bus to swerve into the shelter. Now, some of the images that were coming out earlier that people were tweeting, it was just absolutely incredible. The entire front window of the bus shelter was gone. You could see that seats were exposed, and paramedics and police were on ladders trying to get to people. Dwight?
Ithel, we're hearing right now between 12 to 17 people injured and some critically. Is that the latest information at this point?
Yes, some people have been critically injured, and we do know there are fatalities, Dwight. We've been told just a few minutes ago that people have died as a result of this accident, but the exact number, we're not going to find that out just yet. The police would not disclose that. Now, there is a seniors recreation center just a few blocks away. people can go there, we've been told, to find out about family members. Earlier when we arrived, there was a woman who was very, very upset. She was crying and distraught because she knew that she could tell her husband's phone was here, but she couldn't contact him. So people now are going to be going to a senior's home nearby to find out and get information about their loved ones. Dwight?
Developing story in Ottawa right now. Ithel Musa on the scene live for us. Ithel, thank you. There's an update on a story we've been watching closely out of Cuba now. A bus crash there has killed 7 people. 2 Canadians on board were injured, but not seriously. The crash happened yesterday, not too far from Guantanamo Bay in the island nation's southeast. At least 5 passengers pulled alive from the wreckage are in critical condition. Authorities haven't released any names of anyone killed or hurt, but local media say the 40 tourists on board included 22 foreigners. Both Canadians injured are in their 50s. One suffered a minor head injury, the other an arm injury that warranted surgery. As to how this happened, the driver reportedly lost control on a wet and winding road. A Saudi teenager who took to social media to plead for safe asylum will be coming here to Toronto. The Prime Minister confirmed Canada has agreed to welcome Rufa Mohammed Al Qamoon.
The UNHCR has made a request of Canada that we accept Ms. Al Qamoon as a refugee, and we have accepted.
The United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees granted refugee status to the 18-year-old 2 days ago. She had traveled on her own to Bangkok last Saturday, claiming abuse by her family. She said she hoped to reach Australia, but Thai officials seized her passport, so she holed up in a hotel and began sending out online pleas for help. Thai authorities now say she's already flown out of their country en route to Canada. Justin Trudeau says Canada is pleased to stand up for human rights and women's rights. Travelers heading south this winter might have trouble getting the vaccines they want to protect themselves. There is a national shortage of the popular Twinrix vaccine. It's used in adults and children and infants to prevent hepatitis A and B, but for now, it's in short supply. Robin Miller has more.
You are a traveler.
The Twinrix vaccine helps protect against both hepatitis A and B, but finding it could be a challenge. Jennifer Perlin found that out firsthand. She called 15 Ottawa pharmacies and had no luck.
It was frustrating. I mean, they all said the same thing, so everybody seemed to be experiencing this similar frustrations.
Perlin's doctor recommended the vaccine ahead of a family cruise. Eventually, she found Twinrix at a travel clinic, but had to pay for its administration. She worries other travelers might be deterred by the price and inconvenience of calling around.
There doesn't seem to be any knowledge as to when this problem will be rectified, so I think that's concerning.
Scott Watson wishes he knew. The pharmacist says he's been turning customers away.
Right now I have none. Right now we have got some recently, but we've used it up on people that have already been waiting. So if anybody brought us a prescription today, we'd be out of luck.
The vaccine is available at some travel clinics, but supply is limited.
We do have a supply here, but because of the shortage, we're trying to protect our supply for those who really do need the Twinrix.
Dr. Robert Birnbaum specializes in travel medicine and says the dual vaccine isn't necessary for all travelers because Hep B is usually sexually transmitted.
But if you're taking a one-week trip to the Dominican Republic or Cuba or Costa Rica, you don't need hepatitis B, so you don't need Twinrix, in other words. You just need a Hep A shot, and that's in good supply.
The company that makes the vaccine says it's working to get the Twinrix supply back to normal, but can't say exactly when that might happen. In a statement, GSK Canada says that vaccine manufacturing is a complex process that can take between 10 and 26 months to complete. Robin Miller, CBC News, Ottawa.
Students across Canada rallied today fighting for stronger action on climate change. The Friday for Future movement happens the first Friday of every month. Today, students in Toronto called on the government to address the climate crisis. Organizers say the Ontario Climate Plan is not enough to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. They want to be consulted about the plan as it's about their future. The group marched to the Environment Minister's office asking to meet with the minister to discuss the climate plan. It's an English remake of a French hit, but is there an upside to the upside? Eli joins us with his Friday film review next.
The weather update is brought to you by Train Extreme Conditions Testing. It's hard to stop a train, really hard. Train, the most reliable heating and cooling brand.
What do you think? Come on.
Well, I'm not saying I'd hang it, but there's something
very passionate.
Almost postmodern.
I like the dog.
That's Kevin Hart. He stars alongside Bryan Cranston in the new film The Upside. It's a remake of a French film that came out back in 2011, a story about a wealthy quadriplegic author who hires a young man as his caretaker. So let's dig into this one. Eli's here with his film review. I saw the original,
Yeah.
loved it, with the subtitles and all. Where does this one pick up?
So we've relocated the action. We're in New York City, and now the wealthy, very successful businessman and author and quadriplegic is played by Bryan Cranston. So he's had this amazing life, but he had a hang gliding accident, so now he is paralyzed from the neck down, looking for a new living assistant. And then there's Dell, that would be the Kevin Hart character. Dell is just looking for someone to sign his paper so he can report back to his parole officer, and that's how they meet. Let's take a look.
Relax, it's not a holdup. Just sign this for me, please.
How would I sign it?
I don't know. Slowly. What, don't your arms work?
They don't.
You can move your mouth.
As can you.
And that tells you pretty much all you need to know about the dynamic there. You've got Dell and kind of his lack of compassion and understanding, so that's where some of the so-called comedy comes from. He's trying to get on better terms with his ex-wife, trying to have a new relationship with his son after getting out of prison. And then you have Phil, played by Cranston. There he is. He's also sad because he's lost his wife to cancer. So there's a lot of heavy stuff here, Dwight. But you got to think, Kevin Hart, Bryan Cranston. I mean, these are two, look at that smile there. These are two, when they're working well, most entertaining, charismatic actors. So I can see the math. You know, you put them together, maybe there would be sparks. Well, let's take a look. Here is a scene where Dell goes to check on Phil, and Phil is listening to opera music, because all rich people love opera, I guess. And Dell not so thrilled about that tunage. Take a look.
Why can't we listen to Aretha? You want to feed your soul? Then listen to its queen. Think about it. Yeah. You better think about what you're trying to do to me. Think. It's amazing, ain't it? I sound just like her.
Yeah. When I close my eyes, which I needed to, it's uncanny.
So Hart's not winning any karaoke contests, and that face that Cranston was making, I think I was making that face a lot. So, I mean, for all that talent, kind of fizzles. Not a lot of sparks there.
Sometimes it just doesn't work. Now, Kevin Hart has been in the news a lot lately with controversy about him dropping out from hosting the Oscars. So,
that's correct.
Overall, how is he in this film then?
You know, I mean, here's the thing. This movie, I think, is supposed to change the channel. It's supposed to be able to put that all behind him. And so, yeah, he had to leave this job, dream job of hosting the Oscars, after these homophobic jokes and tweets resurfaced, and he refused to apologize. Now, I saw him recently on The Ellen Show, where Ellen was praising him, saying how amazing an actor he was, and all the layers he shows us in this film. So let's peel back some of those layers, beginning with this scene where the physical therapist is showing him the daily routine of working with Phil.
I'll show you how to get Mr. Lacoste ready for the day.
If you're not too busy.
Nah, me and Mags got this. Get to show her my sensitive side. It's best viewed unclothed and from behind.
And that is just the warm-up for, yes, the how to change a catheter scene.
Have you ever changed a catheter?
No.
Pinch the head, insert.
I can't feel it.
Oh, well, I can.
So there you go. I mean, he talks to Ellen, and he talks about those old offensive jokes. He says, that's not me. I'm a different guy now. I've grown. I've evolved. And then you have this movie where some of the comedy comes from his absolute terror at even just looking at another man's penis, never mind touching it, where in the movie, he's even saying, I don't even want to say the word. I don't even want to say the word. He's that scared. So he says he's a different guy, but, I mean, the jokes, at the very least, need some changing.
All right. The original was great. What did you think of this one? What are you giving it?
Predictable, pablum, mawkish, mechanical. I mean, the thing that frustrates me at heart is that I see the potential. Like, here and there, you see the glimmers where there's little moments of honesty, of sadness, of vulnerability. But you know what he does? He goes back to the same character he's been playing for 3 years. You know, the fast-talking motor mouth who always saves the day, whether he earned it or not. That's what happens in this movie. The solutions fall into his lap. But in real life, the learning curve is a little steeper. 2.5 stars for this upside with no upside.
Watch the original.
Yeah.
Thank you, Eli.
You're welcome.
Traffic along many parts of the 401 and other highways across the province was slowed down today because of a series of convoys by Indigenous protesters in solidarity with this week's anti-pipeline protest in British Columbia. Mike Wise checking the latest on that for us. Mike.
Well, Dwight, as you were saying, there were two large protests along the 401. This is a shot of what was happening in eastern Ontario. This one starting at dawn and disrupting traffic along the 401 in eastern Ontario as well. Let me show you a map of the area this affected. This actually started just outside Cornwall at a Mohawk territory there, attracting not only people from there, but also people coming in from Montreal taking part in this. And it saw two rows of cars driving westbound along the 401 about 50 kilometers an hour. By the time they got to the Kingston area around the noon lunch hour, it really disrupted traffic there. You can imagine the backup there. It ended up at another First Nations territory in between Belleville and the Napanee area. That has cleared. Traffic there has cleared as well. But let me tell you about the other protest, this one in southwestern Ontario. Here's a shot of this. This involved about a dozen vehicles, people from the Oneida Nation of the Thames and the Chippewa of the Thames First Nation. This one started in the London area this morning. And again, these protesters took their convoys and went along the 401 eastbound and the 403, ending up in the Brantford area, going to the Six Nations territory of the Grand River outside of Brantford, where they held a rally there as well. Should also say there were some local blockades that were set up around the Brantford area as well. These have been cleared. The protesters are off the highway at this point. We should say that throughout these protests, they were in constant contact with the OPP officers, providing escorts for these people, for the protesters as well. And in the case of these blockades, even setting up roadblocks nearby to help redirect traffic around the areas that were affected this morning and this afternoon. Dwight?
Thank you, Mike. An update to yesterday's disturbance at Bishop Redding Secondary School in Milton. Police say the 6 young men taken into custody are charged with robbery and are facing dangerous weapons charges also. The school was under lockdown yesterday afternoon after reports of students being chased by another group of students with weapons. Police recovered a knife, a pellet gun, and an airsoft gun. 2 nearby elementary schools were put under hold and secure as a precaution. About 20 pieces of metal crashed onto Yonge Street from 60 stories up. Thankfully, it happened at 4 a.m. and no one was hurt.
From 60 floors up, falling and striking someone would be catastrophic injuries.
The items came from a construction site, prompting the road to be shut down between Queen and Shooters. Some of the pieces were more than 4 meters long. The city says they were being used to shore up a balcony but were no longer needed for support. The construction company, MOD Development, says it's possible the cold temperatures caused materials to contract and then wind blew them off. Landlords versus tenants, tenants versus landlords. When things go wrong in a rental situation, it's usually taken to the landlord and tenant board. But right now, there is a shortage of adjudicators, and tonight, landlords are telling us they're hemorrhaging money while their tenants take advantage of the delays. Alicia San talked to 2 people stuck in the middle.
I can't do anything. I can't get a lawyer to do anything. I can't sue for my money yet. I have to go through the court process.
Longtime landlord Rosa Tucci has got a doozy of a tenant situation on her hands.
So your tenant turned it into a rooming house? Pretty much. Couldn't get a hold of her. Complaints from neighbors that there was a lot of activity at the property, people coming and going.
While she was gone.
Yep. There was about 13, 14 single mattresses all over the property.
Tucci says her tenant was collecting rent from those people and not paying her a cent.
As we had applied for illegal occupancy, got a court date. I went to court, my paralegal showed up, she did not.
That stall cost Tucci a lot of money.
And we had to reapply again for non-payment of rent now.
And because of a shortage of adjudicators at the Landlord and Tenant Board, a hearing date hasn't even been set yet. Tucci says she's out $15,000 in missed rent. Cases like Tucci's have been piling up across the province.
It's never been like this. I've been involved in the system for 18 years. I have never seen entire hearing blocks canceled after they're scheduled. I've never seen 5-month delays to get to a rent hearing.
It's putting pressure on paralegals, too.
And I have a file number. Well, I said, well, where's my notice of hearing? I always get a notice of hearing after you process it. And they say, well, we've processed it, but there's no hearing set. I say, when will you set the hearing? We don't know.
Former adjudicator himself, Harry Fine, says he knows why. The Ford government hasn't hired enough adjudicators.
Because governments have a right for agencies, boards, commissions, and tribunals to appoint like-minded people. I don't have an issue with that.
But what's the holdup?
I don't know what the holdup is.
And with the hearings that are scheduled, Fine says adjudicators do their best to cram in as many as they can in a day.
So the adjudicator says, you probably won't get heard today. Go in the hall and see if you can work it out.
The Ministry of the Attorney General acknowledged the service delays and told us they're currently recruiting to fill vacancies.
Do you think you could settle the matter that you have with your tenant out in the hallway?
Absolutely not. I know lots of landlords that have same issues as I do, and as soon as they get their tenants out, they're putting their properties for sale because they don't want to deal with it anymore. So
there's a lot at stake there.
Yep, and so the government's going to have even more problems because there's going to be less and less properties. There already is less properties available for rent now. There will be even less.
Ali Chiasson, CBC News, Toronto.
It's supposed to be a payday for U.S. federal employees, but thanks to the partial government shutdown, they are doing without. With no end in sight, many are worried about how they'll pay for groceries and cover their rent. Ellen Morrow has more.
At midnight tonight, the shutdown will become the longest in U.S. history, and it's set to continue for some time. Politicians have gone home for the weekend. There's no agreement between Republicans and Democrats how to proceed, and President Trump is dug in on wanting border wall funding before he'll sign any bill to get the government back up and running. Meanwhile, today, for the first time, federal workers are missing out on their paychecks because of this shutdown. That means having trouble paying the bills and anxiety over when this will all end. Here's what some of those workers are saying today.
It makes you sick. It is. It's a pit in your stomach. It's worries. It's just, emotions, and you don't know when this is all going to sort itself out.
We're the only branch of the military that is not guaranteed a paycheck during these times. My husband's in there making homemade bread because it's cheaper than buying a loaf at the store.
I have enough for one more mortgage payment, and I got to go to CarMax tomorrow and sell my car.
And that woman is not alone. Federal workers are starting to find different ways to make money, selling possessions, driving for Uber, babysitting, all trying to make ends meet. Not only that, an airport in Miami International Airport, will close a terminal early for 3 days because of airport security screeners who are not getting paid, calling in sick for work. So more and more impacts of the shutdown are beginning to be felt as the political wrangling goes on with no end in sight. Ellen Morrow, CBC News, Washington.
And as we head to break, here's a look at where the markets closed today. We'll be right back.
The weather update is brought to you by Train Extreme Conditions Testing. It's hard to stop a train, really hard. Train, the most reliable heating and cooling brand.
Is it me, Colette, or do we feel like we're at wind chill-like temperatures, like even without the wind chill?
Yeah, it does feel that way, doesn't it? You know, I guess it's a little bit better. Like this morning, it felt like minus 25 with the wind chill. So as those winds have eased off, now we're kind of looking at it. You take the temperature and you knock about 5 degrees off. There's some exceptions, but you knock about 5 degrees off and then you get your wind chill. So at the temperature, air temperature, minus 9 in Toronto, minus 9 in Mississauga, minus 7 in Hamilton, and minus 11 in both Oshawa and Markham, then minus 15 with the wind chill, minus 17 Oshawa. So you see it's around 5 degrees. Hamilton didn't change just because the winds at the moment are calm, so not a wind chill factor. That'll change, but at least those winds, again, a little bit lighter than what they had been. Our satellite radar imagery just showing a little bit of light flurry activity off to the north and west of us. There's a more significant system, I was showing it earlier in the show, that's coming in from the Plain States. It's been making its way across the Midwest. It'll be coming into the Ohio Valley. It's going to throw some cloud cover, or at least try to, in our direction, but we've got a ridge of high pressure that's kind of blocking it, and as those two interact, we'll pick up a little bit of cloud cover likely, especially earlier in the day tomorrow. This is at 6 a.m. Southwestern Ontario may see a little bit of light snow or flurry activity because that system passing so close. You can see Windsor here picking up maybe a bit of a dusting, but accumulation should stay south of that international border. And overnight tonight, we look at our temperatures falling to around minus 10. Yes, there's going to be a wind chill, but okay, it's going to feel like minus 14, minus 15, not 10 degrees cooler than that like it did this morning. Tomorrow afternoon, still running below seasonal. Just a reminder, at this time of year, minus 2 or so would be an afternoon high. That'd be more typical. Minus 5 for Toronto, minus 4 for St. Catharines, a little cooler for you folks watching from Markham at minus 7 for the afternoon high. And then we go into Sunday. Better chance of significant sunshine Sunday because that system will be long gone, and a bit of a warm-up coming. Okay, back to seasonal as we get towards Monday, Dwight.
Thanks, Colette.
No problem.
It is supposed to be a family-friendly game, but some parents aren't buying it. It's called Cut the Wire, and it gives players clues to defuse a toy bomb before time runs out. After real pipe bombs were sent to some politicians in the U.S. in the fall, some shoppers say a toy bomb is inappropriate and shouldn't be on store shelves. Business reporter Jacqueline Hansen has more.
A device is ticking and is about to go off.
A plastic bomb-like toy that players try to defuse before time runs out.
Trust me, it's so much fun.
Yep, it's really fun.
Online toy reviewers, often given toys by the manufacturer for free, seem to like it.
Okay, you're still in the game.
But this London, Ontario mom saw it on display at her local Walmart and thinks the game is a bust.
Who made the decision to take a bomb that's dangerous, put it in a pretty little box with a family playing with it, and put it on a shelf? It's desensitizing our children to what's dangerous.
She posted about it on Facebook, and so have other bewildered shoppers. In the U.S., Target stopped stocking it. It says it takes customer feedback seriously and worked to remove this item from our assortment.
Walmart Canada says it appreciates the concerns raised regarding the toy and that it didn't intend to offend anyone by carrying it. The game is still for sale here and at other Walmart locations in Canada, but the company says once its stock runs out, it won't order any more.
It's either an appropriate toy or it's an inappropriate toy.
This retail consultant and former toy buyer says Walmart's response falls short.
Bombs are associated with terrorism and war. There's really no other way to say it. And I think it's just, it's sad, and I think it's just completely inappropriate for really any retailer to sell this.
He says that while some Canadians may not take issue with the toy, retailers should remove it rather than risk upsetting any customers.
I don't want to shop there, period, anymore. Like, the decision makers are clearly missing something.
CBC reached out to Yulu, the company that makes the game, about the concerns, but it has not responded. Jacqueline Hansen, CBC News, London, Ontario.
Like that, Martin fires at left center field, back it goes, and gone!
The Canadian kid is gone. The Blue Jays have traded catcher Russell Martin to the Los Angeles Dodgers. In return, Toronto will get 2 prospects. Now, you may remember this Sports Illustrated cover from 2015 when the Blue Jays made their playoff push. Well, every single player in that picture is now no longer with our team. Coming up, a closer look at Canada's problem with plastic waste. We'll tell you what happens to plastics from some of the big grocery store chains and hear how one supermarket in Britain is tackling a similar problem there. The CBC Marketplace story is coming up. A lot of the food we eat is packaged in plastic, but is that plastic being recycled even if you put it in the blue bin? A Marketplace investigation might shock you. David Common is here to tell us all about it. First of all, David, why did you focus on grocery stores for this?
In large part, Dwight, because it's a place that we all go and we go quite regularly. And when you think about what's on the shelves, not just like the plastic wrapped cucumbers, but all the things that are in the middle of the store, there's an awful lot of plastic that's there that's being generated, and we're questioning, does it all need to be there?
And what did your investigation discover?
Well, we found a whole bunch of things, including where recycling from Canada is ending up. It's a long way from Canada, but also we discovered a store that's overseas that's in many ways leading the new path about getting away from plastic packaging.
Grocery store shelves are full of plastic. Sometimes even the coconuts are wrapped. It's cheap and durable, but one use, and the plastic is tossed.
But it's all covered in plastic.
Blue boxes barely make a dent. Just over a tenth of all plastic actually gets recycled in Canada.
Bread wrapped in plastic,
Right.
cheese wrapped in plastic, ground beef in a plastic, covered by plastic, in a plastic bag, in another plastic bag.
Yes.
Some ends up here, mountains of it, shipped to Malaysia, found by Greenpeace. And in there, some from Canada. A grocery bag from Sobeys, a milk bag from the Maritimes, another from a wine store in Halifax, birdseed packaging from Ontario, and a heavy plastic bag from Windsor Salt out of Quebec, shipped around the world to be recycled, but like most plastics, just not worth it. So instead, it's burned. 40% of all plastic comes from packaging from places like Loblaws and Sobeys. They often don't leave consumers with an alternative. Plastic coats their products. Neither Loblaws nor Sobeys would share with us any targets for tackling it. In England, though, one store didn't wait. It eliminated plastic packaging from 2,000 products in just 10 weeks.
We work with brands and with supermarkets to try and find solutions to basically cut off the plastic tap.
Frankie Gillard managed the transition away from plastic.
This is a paper bag, and this has a cellulose film. So it looks
plant-based?
It's completely plant-based.
Across the store, hundreds of examples. And for suppliers who weren't willing to make the change?
Well, you basically say, we're going to delist your product.
Really? You go that far?
Oh yeah, we have gone that far. I'm going to find somebody else that sells what you sell in an environmentally friendly packaging. Yeah.
With the volume power of Loblaws or Sobeys, she believes they too could force suppliers to change, and change quickly.
Thank you, David. If you want to catch David's full story, you can catch it tonight at 8 p.m. on Marketplace, right here on CBC Television. Before we go, we want to tell you again about CBC Toronto's Community Champions. We are recognizing the people and projects that are making the GTA a better place to live, work, and play. And we need your help to find them. If it could be a mentor, your local neighborhood block party organizers, a volunteer group working to raise awareness for a worthy cause. Get creative and think about what kind of selfless acts you've seen in the past year and nominate them. Just head to cbc.ca/communitychampions. All right, we've got about 10 seconds left to tell them just how cold it is out there for this weekend.
That's fine. I don't want to dwell on it anyway,
don't.
right? -10 overnight tonight. Tomorrow's high around -5, -6. We'll see some cloud cover, especially in the morning, and then more sunshine in the afternoon and for Sunday.
Won't feel sunny, though. That's it for us tonight. We'll see you back here on Monday. Have a great night, everybody, and a great weekend, too.